We are back. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project. I'm Rob Kavarowski, and as always, wearing all black today from the Oakland Raiders, Susan Hobson. Susan, how are you?
Is that a compliment? Are they doing well? I am fabulous and so fired up about our interview today. We've got one of our favorite guests of all time on the show for round two. She is somebody who's very near and dear to our heart here at Team Elite. She's one of our A-Team Legacy Leadership 2.0 members. So yeah, let's get this party started.
Let's get this party started. And obviously, we got to set it up a little bit. First, 2022 Olympic gold medalist.
Oh.
But also, now we got to talk a little bit today. And I have something different today. I don't want to start with the quote. But what I want to start everyone off with today is that I'm proud of you.
Ooh.
I'm proud of each one of you listeners for tuning in and stepping up for yourself in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of you for managing your life and the incredible disruption over this last 2 years, and both the return from work to home and home to work and hybrid and all the homeschooling and the vaccinations and all the stuff that's going on. I'm proud of you for taking this moment for yourself. Susan, I'm proud of you for spending and stepping up over the last 2 years for Brooklyn, for yourself, for your clients, and even for the last 2 weeks when you were sick, for letting us step up for you. Kori, I'm proud of you for stepping up for your team and yourself in the moments that you felt like you were maybe on the precipice of something that wasn't great. I'm proud of you for spending 200 nights in a hotel and still able to manage your mind, and step up and perform and basically carve out something that no one's ever done before.
It's been a year, but it's been a good 2 years.
And we're proud of you, Rob. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sure. Yeah.
I couldn't sit on that any longer, sharing all that with us.
And as a high performer, right, we have to acknowledge ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I am proud of myself for the work that I've done in here over the last few years. And even when I couldn't see the light, I still was moving forward.
Oh.
Even when the darkness was everywhere, it was still moving forward. And that's where I want to challenge folks today. The first thing I want to challenge you to do is do just that. Is to tell the people around you that you're proud of them. Your kids, your husband, your wife, your partner, your colleagues, your direct reports, and your manager. And even if you have a 1.0 leader in your life, or you have somebody in your family who really frustrates you, those are the people that I want you to actually lean into and take a moment and really understand all the struggles that they have. Because just like you, they have struggles that are big and small. And just like you, they've pushed through that pain and they've showed up in an area. And maybe you don't like how they're showing up for you, but if you open that doorway and say you're proud of them, you might just find it changes everything. And that's my challenge to you. Go out, have those conversations, and then let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear how it goes for you. You can shoot me an email, rob@elitehighperformance.com, or DM me on LinkedIn, and that's my challenge. Now, Olympic gold medalist Straight out of Nova Scotia, Kori Cheverie is with us. Kori, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today. This is awesome.
So much to be proud of. Kori, I can hardly wait to dig into what this road to the Olympics was like. I know we had you on the show, I want to say this time last year, I think.
Yeah, before everything was what it is now.
We were in the disruption at that point. We were talking about, I think, how you're the quarantine queen. Little did we know that that disruption was warming you up for the big one. That is absolutely why I'm so excited to talk about all of this lead up to, that gold medal. And some of what really had to show up in service to you being able to execute in the ways that you needed to for your team, for your country. As it pertains to this journey that we've been on with you. I think I've been on this journey with you for at least 4 years now, right? So I know this did not come easy. This was definitely earned. But let's start there, shall we? Why don't you catch our audience up to speed in regards to what that experience, that lead up to the Olympics was like for you?
Yeah, so there's a lot there.
I know there is.
I think probably I'll take it back to right before the pandemic hit. It was really my first opportunity to work with the senior national team. Before that moment, I was with the U18 team, the Canadian team, but also Team Ontario. And I was working at Ryerson University as an assistant coach with the men's program as well. So I knew I wanted to work my way up in the Hockey Canada system to be a part of the senior national team. And so right before the pandemic hit was my first opportunity. We had a West Coast swing where we went to Victoria, Vancouver, and Anaheim. And then not even a month later, everything shut down. So I was at that point prepping to be an assistant coach for the Women's World Championship in 2020, which got canceled. So at that moment, it was about, okay, how do we keep our athletes engaged? How do we keep all of our coaches engaged who we can normally bring into our summer camps so they can all kind of share that brainstorming moment through the weeks? And so I really give credit to some of our leaders at Hockey Canada who really kind of pushed the envelope and tested us as coaches to stay engaged and what were some of the ways that we could continue to meet virtually, but then also how do we keep our athletes engaged and how do we allow them to continue to learn and grow and understand concepts that we wanted them to implement without having the use of the ice.
Right.
So that was really kind of the primer for where everything ended up. So 2020, we early on, we weren't on the ice together. Hockey Canada coaches met bi-weekly and everybody took turns presenting on different topics. It could be anything. It could be technical, tactical, it could be mental performance, which my presentation, I don't know if you remember, Susan, was mindset training. So I did that for the entire group of coaches, which was pretty cool because it was like U18, senior national, development, and then also coaches who were involved with Hockey Canada but weren't necessarily on a staff at that moment. So it was a cool opportunity to engage with all of those coaches. So then leading into kind of the fall of 2020 was when we were able to get back on the ice as small groups. So that's where it kind of started. I was working with the Toronto athletes in Oakville every week with a small group of athletes. I think max was 14 when the timing permitted. I can't remember what all the regulations were. And then, we focused on that in the different hubs of each kind of group. So there was a hub in Montreal, Toronto, and Calgary. And we did that for 5 to 6 months, continuing with our coach meetings and then our athlete meetings too. We met with them bi-weekly and talked about different things. It could be nutrition, mental performance, tech tac, whatever it was, just to keep them engaged and sharp.
Right.
And then January 2021 was the first time we were ever going to come back together as a group at a camp. And, everybody was nervous. They were nervous about COVID. Everybody had to be masked. We were in a hotel. We would be in our hotel, right to the rink, back to our hotel. And with sports teams or kind of any conference that you may go to, you use the meeting spaces at the hotel and you have your meetings. Well, here we didn't do that. We went all back to our hotel rooms and then jumped on a Zoom call and had our meetings virtually.
That's so wild.
So that was kind of, I do give a lot of credit to our head coach who really pushed us as a staff to find new ways to keep the athletes engaged and to focus on different ways that we could make connections. One thing that I thought I would bring to future teams that I worked with was in the first couple of days we were at our first camp, we only allowed the athletes to come in small groups to the rink. Mm-hmm. They had to plan the practice for what they wanted because it was truly about them. So their input was very, very important. It was truly about them to feel comfortable, get ready for a camp, be ready to be evaluated. So they truly got to choose the drills that they wanted to do. And it was just small groups of 3. So the cool thing about that was that we actually got to meet the athletes that we didn't know very well, talk to them on a one-on-one basis and spend that quality time together, which I thought was cool to start any sort of new training camp or new season with your sports team, or even, in the corporate world, breaking off into smaller groups and being able to learn about each other early on. So that was something that I thought was pretty cool. And then fast forward a little bit, a few camps later, lots of quarantining. We're supposed to have Worlds 2021. It gets canceled.
Again, in case we're counting, this is the second cancellation, the second disruption, right?
And again, it was basically before the teams we were already in Halifax, but the rest of the teams were one day out from flying in. So that all got canceled. Everybody kind of went back home and, we went back to work through the summer, online concepts, small group work. And, we got prepared for the 42-day bubble leading into Worlds. So July 21st to August 31st, we were in a bubble together. Which means, just for our audience, just to make sure they understand the bubble. Yeah. So that's 42 days in a hotel. You're not allowed to drive through the Starbucks drive-through. You're not allowed to go for a walk to go get a Starbucks. You could go for outdoor walks. You could go to the gym at the rink or in the hotel, but pretty much everything was rink to hotel. We weren't, I don't believe we were allowed to walk to the rink either. We had to bus or take a car. And that was in the summer months when it's beautiful out. Right. So that was very, very, I think it tested a lot of people. And just, what we know of COVID and, some things made sense, some things didn't. So it tested a lot of people at a really, really crucial time. Luckily, I think for us, we did so much in the lead up. We had devastation in the cancellations of Worlds ×2. We were used to staying in our hotel room and meeting online. They were used to learning new concepts without actually being able to go on the ice right away and work on it. Right. So everybody was, I think, pretty prepared. Another thing that, with the World Championship, once we finally did get to perform was, no fans in the stands. Some families were able to come, but not a lot. So again, it was a World Championship for a lot of athletes who, you are used to having fans in the stands and are used to performing in front of people and having their families there. So there was a lot of disruption with our group. It was pretty remarkable, but I mean, we have professional athletes. That's what they do. And they just needed to be professional in other ways. And throughout all that disruption, I kind of feel like you started to describe just some of the opportunities in that adversity. I certainly think
that, getting together with the new athletes in smaller groups, having that exchange of their ideas. It's such a wonderful foundation in terms of building that rapport, right?
Yeah.
Which I kind of think when you described all the other, right, disruptions and you're needing to adapt as a team throughout that gauntlet of cancellations and everything else. I mean, there was already that baseline of trust, right, that had been building because you guys were showing up to the disruption in that way. So what do you feel like were some of the biggest kind of, silver linings in terms of some of the opportunities for growth that were buried in all of that adversity for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I only really spoke up until World Championships. There's still a whole year of centralization that we spent together leading up. But what I think it did, and I remember starting off our first January camp 2021, when we were all together, we talked about the iterative process and how important that was going to be. And half the group, probably 90% of the group, didn't know what the word iterative meant, including myself. Yeah. And I bet you Rob would know.
Because you will soon now that you're in analytics.
I feel like it's like a math word. Anyway, so funny enough, it stuck with me because I was asked to read the quote at the beginning of camp, and I was asked right on the spot. Like, I had never gotten to read the quote first. I was asked, it was my first time being like full time with the team. And I'm like, I don't know that. I didn't say I don't know that word, but I fumbled through it.
Yeah.
So then every time we brought that quote back up, I would always be asked to read it, which was kind of funny because we'd make the joke. But
I love that.
I think that was the first kind of stepping stone to maybe changing the direction of how Hockey Canada would operate its national team. Which I thought was really, really cool because, these women have grown up their entire lives competing against each other in an environment where they are trying to win the spot, your spot, and you're trying to win their spot. And same with the coaches, you're trying to compete with the coaches around you. So how do we give permission to the group that it's okay to form a family-like environment, create a really positive culture, even though, your livelihood depends on being on that team. So that was the first step, I think, in how we were able to shift and adapt and pivot when things were tough. We were able to, hey, you know what? This is, a hiccup, a bump in the road. It's a part of our story. We can take what we need and leave what we don't and continue on the path. And so our athletes really bought into that. And I think that, that was a part of why or how we started a conversation on the mental resiliency that we needed our athletes to have, and that it was okay to not be perfect in this environment, which I think was in the past, everybody always tried to be so perfect. And we know that perfectionism does not work. We know it's okay to make mistakes. And I will say, I'll take it for the team that I fumbled through iterative because it probably made everybody else feel that much better.
That created that safe space. You totally gave them permission to get at the front of the room or be on the ice and be the one on the top of the PK or the top of the PowerPoint or whatever. And and fumble your way through the play, right? And not know exactly how to execute on whatever it is that they needed to do. So I think that's what we talk about all the time, right, Rob? That's vulnerability, which is really a powerful thing for a leader to model if that's what they're going to ask of their people.
And I would love, Kori, you to go deeper on that topic, right? Because there's a lot of organizations out there where it is like the top 10% get the highest rating, the bottom 10% get fired, or like your sales, and basically you're competing against the person next to you to win whatever in the what is it, whatever, the steak knives or something.
So,
how do you build that foundation of like trust and familial and work together when you're in an environment where it's like me versus you?
Yeah. So, I mean, it all started with the iterative process. And the first thing that we focused on as a group was being a good teammate. And again, it's in an environment that like, it's hard to be a good teammate when you want that spot, when you those selfish kind of behaviors and actions tend to come out. And so I remember at the heading of every one of our Camp 1 pagers was be a good teammate. And that's what we focused on because everybody's skilled enough to be there. So what was going to be the separator or the point of difference for how you were going to make this team? So we focused on things like being a good teammate. And, some of the themes that kind of emerged, one that really stuck out to me was accountability with this group. You think about the amount of coaches that have coached in this group, the amount of players who have played in this group. You go into an environment where you're coaching Brianne Jenner or Marie-Philippe Poulin or Jocelyn The Rock, who, have been to 10 world championships, 4 Olympic games, and, you're going in there to try to help. And you're a 6-year coach who's first time being with the senior national team. So I think with this group, what one thing that was kind of, I would say, lacking was the accountability piece, because everybody was scared to come in and coach and to have those tough conversations, whether it be coach to coach or player to coach or coach
player to player.
Player to player, everything. Everybody was nervous to have those conversations, but what they didn't realize was by having those conversations, we were being kind to each other instead of being nice, because often we're nice to each other and not kind. And so we really talked a lot about the two-way street of feedback and how important that was, and that we all have one common goal, and that's to win a gold medal. And so we're working together in order to get there. So if I'm constantly giving that show and tell piece like coaches normally do, less likely that athletes are going to buy into that. The two-way street of feedback where they have that opportunity to talk about the concepts that they think work or don't work, or, hey, how do we want to communicate with each other on the bench? I had conversations with athletes like that this year where it's like, I haven't quite figured out how you want me to give you feedback on the bench. I'd like to know so that I'm not, relaying information to you that isn't kind of sinking in. So I think it's okay to have those conversations. And we really created an environment where being a good teammate meant we were holding people accountable. It meant we were having hard conversations. And it's easy to take things personally. And I know that I have, and I probably did through the year as well. But it's not about the me, it's about the we. And when you start to think of it like that, it gets a lot easier to have those conversations with your coaches, with your athletes, and with all the people around you.
I love that. And it's actually, it's funny. One of our future guests, Kim Scott, has a book, Radical Candor. And they talk about
what I was thinking about.
What you were mentioning, Kori, it's called Ruinous Empathy in their 2x2 matrix, where it's we are unwilling to have a real conversation about what's going on. So we're just going to say everything's good. And what you've created was literally on the matrix on the other side where she talks about radical candor. It's care personally and challenge directly.
I love that.
And that's where that foundation of trust and those small pockets, those small groups, and be a great teammate, that's where you can lean into challenge directly. Because if you don't have that foundation, then it just becomes, well, on the other corner, obnoxious aggression, which all three of us know being former athletes.
Take us the rest of the way. I want to hear the rest of this story in terms of the actual coming down the pipeline, because I was coaching you through this, and this is where it really started to get intense.
Yeah. So We had been pretty fortunate as a group all the way up to December of 2021 that COVID had not hit our group yet. And so it may be a silver lining. We had just come off kind of a grueling month of November where we went to Finland for a week. We came back, we played 2 games against the US on home soil, and we lost both games. And it was the only 2 games that we lost to the US.
Wow.
From World Championships onwards. And, when you put on the Canadian jersey, you always want to show up. You always want to play your best and have your best team available. And on home soil, you want to win. And, I think that was pretty devastating for the group to not be able to win on home soil. And it was evident that, maybe we were a bit fatigued. Maybe we were a bit jet lagged. Who knows? But it turned out to be a really good silver lining to lose those 2 games. We went into an under 17 boys tournament. So the best 16-year-olds in the country. Yeah. Wow. Phenomenal hockey players. We learned so much this year as a group. We played in this tournament, but we also played in a junior A league this year where we would normally play in an under 18 AAA league. So it was, going from playing boys to men. And we played in this under 17 tournament, and we went from, losing the first game 7-0, and all the girls being like, why are we doing this? Like, oh gosh, exhausted, to, finishing the tournament in our semifinal game against the team that ended up winning. We took them to overtime and lost in overtime against them, and they ended up winning the tournament. So, we saw huge leaps and bounds in our group through that one event. And then we went down to the States again and played in St. Louis. We won 2 straight games in OT against the Americans, and then COVID hit, and we had to stop our road trip and finish there and not go to Minnesota. But I think it was probably, a break that everybody did at that time.
Totally.
And so everybody who, didn't get COVID went home and tried to stay as isolated from the general population as they could. And then the ones who did get COVID ended up not being able to go see their families over Christmas and had to kind of stay. And, some of them grouped up into a house and all kind of stayed together. And then it was a little bit of a staggering return after Christmas, which was in January, which is 1 month out from the Olympics. So a lot of
adversity,
fear, anxiety, all of it. And so this is, in the beginning of January, myself and one of the other coaches, we were the only 2 coaches back. And so we were doing everything. I was the goalie coach for 2 weeks, and we were leading all of the practices. We were going out, setting up the shooter tutors. We were just doing everything together. When normally we have like 5 coaches. So, for just 2 of us to be there, that was a unique experience as well. And then, worst case scenario happens for me is when everybody kind of comes back into the bubble. I then caught COVID with another coworker as well. So it was a stressful time. It was worst case scenario. A lot of waiting around, a lot of getting tested and not getting the results that you needed, to the point where eventually they just called it. It was out of my control, and I wouldn't be traveling to Beijing. So it was a moment where I was, I had to get home. I was in Vancouver at the time. I was like, I need to take the math out of this. I know Nova Scotia's a 12-hour time change, so I'm going home. And, I just decided, and obviously working with Susan, that it was time to just put the coach's hat on. And even though I had, my own emotions of what I was going through, the team needed me. I didn't get to go, but also they didn't have their forward coach over there. So that's another piece to the puzzle where, they've been used to me for the past 2 years, and now I wasn't going to be over there with them. So it was taking everything that that we had done through the year and figuring out a way, how can I stay involved? How can I still coach from Canada? And so, a couple things, I changed to a nap schedule for 2 weeks where I just napped, 3 hours and then would be up. I watched all the games live, which were at midnight. I would talk to players after for about 2 hours and then try to sleep before our team meeting. I got Zoomed in for all of our team meetings, that was fun. And I still, put together all of my presentations that were my responsibility. And I still got to meet with all of the players almost every single day. So, to be honest, from being in Canada, I probably saw the players more than if I was in Beijing, because I know that there are strict policies over there as well, where you go to the rink and then you go back to your dorm and, you can go to the meal hall and that's pretty much it. And I know as a group, our group was a little bit split up. So some coaches were in the village, some coaches were in a hotel, some staff in the hotel, some staff in the village. So I know that it was tricky to really stay fully engaged outside of our meeting times, our team meeting times. So I was very, very fortunate that I was available over here in Canada, basically on call to meet with the players and go through video with them and just have check-ins. So it was obviously not ideal, but there's a lot of silver linings, throughout that process, and a lot of the prep leading up to the Olympics of, using our technology in different ways allowed me to stay really engaged in that whole process.
And really, really resilient. Who knew, Kori, working on our AQ way back when, right? And staying in our empowerment, and heard that all of that was going to come and be so requisite in this final moment, right? Where everything gets disrupted as the team heads to Beijing and you stay here in Canada. So I kind of feel like when we were talking about this, we were calling this like almost like the gold lining, right? It's like you actually found something in that disruption, and the way that you were able to show up in service to leading these girls remotely. Remember we were talking about that? Like you had some benefits that even the coaches that were over there in the village with all that stimulus, right, and distraction, you didn't have that, right? And you were having these touch points with the players. So you want to talk a little bit about some of the gold lining in that?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like even though I was a coach of the team, I was also a little bit removed. So I was someone that the players could really reach out to not only help with their game on the ice, but their game off the ice as well, because, some of them, it was their first Olympics, some their second, for Poulin and Johnny, I think it was their fourth Olympics. But, I met with every single forward in a different capacity for different things, whether it was their on the ice play or something that they want to look at in special teams, to even just being someone who could be there for them, that they could kind of confide in, that they were going through a lot over there and the weight of the world was on their shoulders. And, if they didn't have a great game, how, could I help them with bouncing back, knowing that I could see that they were, nervous, anxious, stressed out. So for my personal, like as a coach, I felt like I was able to have even a greater impact on their success, on their individual play than if I was over there. And it actually really improved my relationships with a lot of these athletes, because I was there for them when, sometimes being over there, like you were saying, all the stimulus and there's things to do and you're always preparing for the next. Sometimes some of the one-on-one meaningful conversations get missed because there's so much to do.
Speak on it, because I feel like that was the gold lining. I mean, I saw it so clearly, right, as we kind of went through this, is that you really got an opportunity to lean in and create safe spaces for these players. Because please believe, you can do all the training in the world. This is still the Olympics, folks. This is probably the most pressure that will ever be on the nervous system for these athletes. So yeah, I mean, that's to be expected, right? Is like, that's going to be the make or break for those athletes, is that do they have a coach that can be present enough and grounded enough to actually just focus on that, right? Without all the distractions and bombardment of stimulus in and around that Olympic experience when you're actually there.
Yeah. Yeah. I reflected back on some of the conversations that I had throughout the year, not while we were at the Olympics. And I remember like looking back on them and thinking, oh my God, I felt like I was in such a rush to get out of that conversation, not because I wanted to stop talking to them, but because we had to get off the ice, and then we had a meeting, and then we had this, and then we had that. So I often felt rushed, and those conversations weren't as impactful as they could have been. And so that's something that I think moving forward with, as a coach, it's take the time and be people first, because the deadlines are there. They're always going to be there. But find different ways. If you have to get off the ice, take the conversation out into the hallway, in the rink, or even say, hey, like, we're getting kind of kicked off the ice here, but let's find time let's sit together at lunch and let's continue this conversation. So I wish I had done more of that throughout the year, like with knowing what I went through with the Olympics, where I was prepared. I was super prepared for every single athlete that I was going to meet with, because it had to be structured and scheduled. And it wasn't just, we get chit-chatting at the end of practice. So I was able to be fully engaged in these conversations. So that's something that I think I will really try to focus on moving forward with even the conversations at the rink that I have too.
I would love to go deeper there, Kori, right? Because like, I get this question a lot from leaders. I mean, the first question is, how do you even open space for those conversations to happen? And then the second question I get almost all the time is, how do we balance the fact that we want to be people first with the fact that we need to perform and try to win a gold medal?
Right.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I feel like myself and my style as a coach is always to have that relationship with them first. And I think fortunately for me, and this obviously isn't in every situation, but a lot of these players I actually played against because I'm very close in age with them.
That's right.
And some of them I played with. So I felt like I had a pretty good foundation with some of them, but I think I'm always the type of person that wants to have fun, but can be serious when the time comes, and really recognizing those opportunities and that it can't always be serious. We can't go at 150 clips an hour every single day, every single minute. So it is important to schedule some fun in. And I'm laughing because we once had a video session where, like, I loved some of the ideas that our coaches had, because they weren't always like, oh, we have to teach something new on the power play or teach something new on the PK. Sometimes, like one time we had a meeting on recency bias. We had a meeting on different forms of feedback. We had a meeting, just different concepts, all meaningful, because we wanted them to understand certain things and not kind of hang on to certain things. But I feel like I completely lost where I was going. But the thing was, our video session, we were showing like a drill bank that we had, and every single drill from the quad, so the last 4 years, was titled what we were working on, every single drill. And there was a category of fun. And I remember this because Poulin, so, like Captain Canada, points out and is like, how many drills are in that fun column over there? And
accountability check for the coaches. I love it. This is a 2.0 organization right here.
Something along those lines. And, I think what we forget in working in high intense, high stress, high performing environments is that we're all kids at heart and everybody wants to have fun. And, with the senior program, it's very easy to go in there and be like, well, we need to do this and we need
to work
and really kind of drive that sort of bus. But it's super important to offer the fun side of the game and the fun side of life. And I felt like we did a really good job of balancing that this year. We had a lot of casual opportunities to get to know these athletes, and we went golfing together. We had event nights together. We had celebrations together, and it just opens the door for those casual conversations to sit down and be had. And I remember a couple of times early on with the program, actually midway through, I would walk into a meal room and I would see two athletes sitting together, two that I would never think would be sitting together having a conversation. And it just blew my mind because it spoke to what we've created as a group, the leadership group, the coaches and the team as a whole, that, anybody at any time, whether you're a first year on the team or you've been on the team for 15 years, could sit down and have lunch together and have those conversations and really lean on each other. And that's kind of when I knew that we created an amazing environment where people could flourish and not feel the need to be perfect all the time.
What do you feel like this whole crazy up and down and all around, right, nonlinear experience leading up to and then leading through, right, the disruption itself in the actual Olympic event? What do you feel like you learned about yourself? What did this teach you about you and who you are and your capacity? What were some of those major insights? Do you feel like you walked away from this experience banking?
Yeah, I mean, I even had this thought process recently, like if I had have been a coach at the 2018 Olympics, which would have been before you and I met, I would have spiraled, I think, out of control, where going into a dark place where I wouldn't be able to, hold space for anybody other than the emotional distress that I was probably feeling. And I think in this moment, I was able to put all of that aside and truly show up for the athletes and be a good teammate and learn to not take anything for granted ever again, because that was a hard part too, is, you think you're going to go to the Olympics. You think that your experience means being on the ground at the Olympics. But I had an Olympic experience. It was just from Canada in my living room. And it was a different games experience, but also probably pretty similar because I was in hiding here because nobody knew that I was home. They were in hiding in Beijing, from rink to dorm. But it really made me feel like I could do absolutely anything moving forward, because that was should have been the hardest time in my life. It was, but I was able to get through it and live to tell the tale and talk about it on this side. And, because we all dream, Susan, as kids, we all want to be on that senior national team. Our whole lives are dedicated to it. Then you don't get to go. So it's like, it was one of those.
But did you really feel like you didn't go? Because I kind of feel like the thing I was most impressed by is like you were still in it to win it, so engaged, running alongside those athletes, using all this amazing emotional intelligence work that I know you have been so disciplined on over the last couple of years leading up to this event. It was remarkable to me to see. It's like, I don't think her fulfillment suffered all that much. Like, yeah, of course it would have been cool, quote unquote, to have that experience. But I mean, what I thought was so impressive is that because of all that work you'd been committed to leading up to this, is that, you still had that fulfillment. You still had that sense of reward. You still had that level of impact that we had been gunning for. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because we've always had that conversation, like, what's your impact? How, and I always struggled with it. I was like, I don't know how to impact these athletes the way that I think I want to.
Yeah.
And then if it, after this Olympics, I knew I had an impact.
Totally. And I feel like that is the gold lining, if we could be so bold, is that you kind of innovated. I mean, you got to be the first Olympic coach that had to lead in this way. I mean, if you know of any others, please point them out, because I'm ignorant on that fact. But I kind of feel like, and this is Kori to the T, because you're the first female on the male side of the game, breaking barriers, crushing glass ceilings, shattering them into a million pieces. But I kind of feel like what we found here is this really should exist. This kind of coach, this type of EQ coach from a mindset perspective that isn't necessarily distracted at the actual event for all the reasons that we just mentioned. I kind of feel like there's an opportunity in what you discovered there, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah. It would be interesting to do something like that, where the goal all along is that they won't be there. Because I'm curious as to, could you build the rapport good enough with them, knowing that they know you're not going to be there? Maybe. It would be interesting to dive a little deeper into that. Whereas with this situation, we didn't know that I wasn't going to be there up until February 4th. Mm-hmm. So, our relationship had been already built. So you'd have to be pretty strategic. But I think that it definitely opens the gates for an opportunity for a virtual eye in the sky. But next time I'd like to go. Someone else.
You've already done that. You've done that. You've been done there, done that.
Done that. I need the experience next time on the bench.
So Kori, you mentioned one thing. You said that now you believe you can do anything.
I knew he was going to hang on to that.
What is next for you? Lots
are next. Actually, it's not public knowledge yet, but I'm going to be doing a little bit of work on the men's side with Hockey Canada. I'm going to go with the U18 program to Germany, the Worlds, in a couple of weeks here. And then I'm going to be able to have an impact on U18, the development team, and the senior team on the women's side. So all three groups I get to be a part of in some capacity, which is nice, because I feel like I can have a great impact throughout the entire program, and not just with the senior national team. So that'll be pretty exciting coming up here in the near future throughout the year. So
yay. That is exciting. Congrats on that. And what do you feel like based on all these lessons? Because, oh my gosh, was this ever ripe in the learnings? That's why we keep anchoring into that belief on this show through the disruption of the last 2 years for our leaders, is that adversity is always the opportunity for growth, dressed up and disguised as adversity. If this interview doesn't prove that theory, folks, I don't know what will. So what do you feel like in all these lessons we've riffed on today? What do you feel like that has inspired in terms of the mission that you're going to go on, the impact that you want to have on these athletes? And yes, oh yes, the final destination. What do you want the legacy of all that to be?
Yeah, I think going through this, it'll always be kind of my personal experience. And I think moving forward, I'm not going to be afraid to push people to where I think that they can go, and where they don't necessarily know they can go yet. But I think being through this experience, it's, not to waste time and not be afraid to step up in those moments and be there for the athletes, and maybe do things a little bit differently than what we've ever thought before. Because I think more and more we're going to need to lead with that people first mentality that we talked about, and taking the time for people is going to be so important. Like I remember the people who reached out to me while I was here in Canada, and the team was over in Beijing. And, you know, those people really stood out to me as people who truly cared about other people. And I think if you can make people feel that they belong in a group, the sky is the limit for the success of that group. And I think for me as a coach, I want to be known as the glue. I want to be known as the coach that brought people together and kept people together and allowed people to grow to their fullest potential in that space.
I freaking love it. Rob, how proud are you now?
It's incredible. And obviously we have to ask this question, Kori. How did it feel when you put the gold medal around your neck?
Well, I got to put around the gold medal around my neck from the athletes, and all the staff will get theirs down the road. And it was amazing. It just felt like a dream come true. Everything that we had worked towards finally, you know, we were dreaming of that moment in 2020. And then when it happened in 2022, winning world championship and Olympics, there was no better feeling.
Proof positive that anything is possible.
We won't ask about the Russia game where you all had to wear masks. That'll be the next interview.
Yeah,
so,
the next one.
That's right, Kori. If people are inspired, I mean, obviously they should be inspired by this incredible story. But if they want to reach out to you, follow your journey, where should they find you?
Right now, on Twitter, Kori Cheverie. My Instagram will be the same when I get back on there, and on LinkedIn. So those are the three areas that they can find me. As of right now.
Perfect. We'll drop all those in the podcast notes. So feel free if you want to head over and hit up Kori. You can find it there. For us, obviously, please subscribe to Leadership Launchpad Project on your favorite podcast platform. And if you were inspired by this episode, definitely share it with leaders in your life and accept the challenge of saying you're proud to the people that frustrate you most in your life and everyone else, and everything leadership development, mindset coaching, and all else. Head on over to elitehighperformance.com. Now, Susan, anything you want to leave us with today?
Woo, so many emotions. I mean, my cup runneth over with pride for my girl, Kori. This was a real gold medal moment for me in terms of feeling that pride for this journey that we'd been through and just this culminating moment. I mean, we could not have written it better. I feel like this is absolutely just, I love it. Calling it the gold lining, it totally fits. But I think what I want to leave people with is this is why we always anchor into this whole teamwork makes the dream work thing, right? This little girl who dreamt of going to the Olympics and draping the gold around her neck. She, full circle moment. It's above me, all of that was buried in this episode in terms of why People First Leadership 2.0 is the way to go in terms of helping all of us realize our highest potential, right? It's like that dream is the way your potential speaks to you. And you can't realize that potential if you don't get outside that comfort zone in the disruption, play with that adversity, and stick with it enough to find that opportunity for growth. I just love this interview because it's a full circle moment for where you and I started, right? This show at the start of the pandemic.
I know.
Crazy, right?
Yep.
I love it too. And obviously, I have to have a quote. So I have a quote from Jensen Saw. And he says, to break through your performance, you've got to break through your psychology. And we can see that theme popping up time and time and time and time. How many times in this interview?
Too many to count.
This was canceled, that was canceled. We flew here, we were ready here, we were in this hotel room, that hotel room, and
Crazy.
leveling up the psychology, leveling up the mindset, understanding, leaning into people, connection, trust, vulnerability, spaces where folks can be real with each other. That's the glue that Kori wanted to be, that held the team together and ultimately ends in a gold medal. And you can do that at your office. You can do that at your house. You can do that in your community. It starts with you taking a dive and a look into your mind. Kori, what an incredible interview, and you have an incredible story to share with everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kor.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Obviously, I'm proud of you, and I would love you to let me know how the I'm Proud of You challenge goes. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.